The South African Medical Research Council and Earthlife Africa want the Minister of Electricity to review his decision to procure 2.5 megawatts of new nuclear energy. Dr. Newzroom announced plans to add more capacity to the grid recently. Now joining us is Francesca de Gasparis, who is the Executive Director at the Southern African Faith Communities Environment Institute. Francesca, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. Just talk to us about the challenges that you are seeing where the Minister of Electricity is looking to move into nuclear, and just what are some of your objections and concerns that you're raising with this move?
Well, good evening. Thank you. Yes, this has been going on for some time now, but you've seen a much bigger push recently with the procurement of new nuclear. And just before the Government of National Unity, well, before elections, we filed papers to say that we believe this new procurement of nuclear is being done in an unlawful way. So we are challenging the rationality of the decision and the process that's been followed.
So just talk to us about then how you assess the environmental, social, and of course the economic impacts of this proposed nuclear energy project, and what risks or consequences do you believe these initiatives will have, especially on local communities, the ecosystems, and also for future generations?
Thanks. Yeah, you know, the last time government wanted to do a big nuclear procurement, we took them to court as well. We joined Earthlife Africa in that court case in 2017, and it was declared unconstitutional, illegal, and set aside. And that was part of the state capture issues. This time round, it's part of the IRP, the Integrated Resource Plan for 2019. But the language is very important, and this is where it gets quite legal. It was commence preparation at a pace and scale that the country can afford. And we've gone way beyond commencing preparation, straight into procurement. The procurement agreement was conditional, and that was done a couple of years ago already. And we weren't given the right, even though we asked several times through legal means and others, for another public participation process. We believe that the public hasn't been adequately informed about this decision. And, you know, energy and all of our democratic processes are meant to have that kind of oversight, where the public is allowed to also say, actually, we do want this or we don't. The main reason why we disagree with new nuclear is not the technical reasons of a court case, however. It's more around affordability. You know, if you look at the costs done independently by researchers, nuclear is much, much more expensive than renewable energy. It takes a long time, so it won't address our current load shedding problems or the energy crisis that we're still having, even though we haven't had load shedding lately. And it won't make our electricity more affordable. You might have heard recently in the news that Eskom wants to increase electricity prices by 44%. It's been going up double digits every year. And now we're having another huge increase. This is because Eskom had all those years of mismanagement and now has a massive debt that it just can't afford. Well, consumers of electricity, and that's everyone living in South Africa, can't afford to pay for Eskom's debts. And Eskom needs to actually sort itself out without making electricity so unaffordable. And because nuclear is so expensive, we don't believe it's the right choice for South Africa. Go with the more cost-effective, quicker to install, and quite frankly, safer, less toxic energy. So it's on all fronts. The environment, the fact that we really globally are moving to a decentralized energy systems, these energy systems that live on people's roofs or locally, and you can actually make money back if you make an investment and the government allows you to put the electricity that you're making back onto the grid. There's lots of things that need to reform in our energy system. And going with a centralized, extremely costly and toxic nuclear system just does not fit the needs of South Africa.
And you don't believe...
And as a faith-based organization, our founder always used to say, God gave us wind and the sun, why don't we use it? And there's no better case for that than right now in terms of the affordability of renewable energy.
Speaking of the wind and the sun, you don't believe that an energy mix that does include nuclear would be one that's more balanced for South Africans, especially in terms of the demand? Would we be able to produce enough energy just based on those renewables?
Well, if you look at the timeline, so I mean, I agree with you completely. We've got to look at energy mix. And that's why we also took the government to court over another piece of its legislation, the Integrated Energy Plan. This was last year with the Green Connection. We joined them to say, hey, let's look at our energy system in an integrated way. It's part of government legislation. They didn't use it for 15 years. So we've been doing our planning by sector. So we'll look at nuclear energy and say, let's have nuclear energy, but not comparing it against the other energy systems. And this is what's missing at the moment in the thinking and planning. So if you look at nuclear energy, it's going to take us at least a decade to come online, and it's much more expensive than any of the other energy systems. By the time we get to 10 years' time, how much solar and other renewable energy can we have put onto the grid? And during that time, the evolution of the battery and storage in the last 10 years, if you forecast that over the next 10 years and hear what they're doing with batteries, you'll see that actually we don't need nuclear. It's becoming redundant as an energy system. It's an energy system from the 20th century, and we're now in the 21st century. So there's just no rational reason for us to go in that direction.
Others have argued in terms of the lifespan of batteries and solar systems, and many years down the line, how do we discard those, and won't that then be harmful to the environment when the time comes?
Nothing like radiation from nuclear power stations. These, a lot of the waste takes tens of thousands of years that needs to be kept and stored before it becomes safe. Some of it is hundreds of thousands of years. So when you look at that, the true cost of nuclear energy and its waste is never calculated into these systems. I'm just talking about the high construction cost and the length of time it takes to construct it. We're not even going into the actual waste and other issues. I mean, again, if you compare renewables to nuclear, it's nothing. I mean, of course, yes, there are issues with waste and with renewals and everything. And that's with any energy system you choose. But we know also that Eskom actually has a very bad track record, and no one seems to be talking about that. When you look at its coal-powered power stations, look how overrun they were in cost and in length of time to be built, and all the problems we've had with them, the poor decision-making. We feel Eskom still needs to show that it really is up to speed. When we look at the renewal of the Koeberg power station, you can see that Eskom hasn't even done the safety features that it should be doing before it goes for a license. So Eskom is still way behind where it needs to be in terms of deliverables, in terms of the standards that we would expect from an organization that has that much responsibility for our electricity.
Lastly, Francesca, how much of engagement do you think still needs to happen? You spoke earlier on that you feel that the public hasn't been engaged enough. How much of that do you think still needs to happen? And also for the public to take an active role in participating and making their voices heard with such decisions, because it's our future generations that will be impacted on the decisions that are taken today.
Yeah, I think that actually government should do way more than they do. It's often left to organizations like SAFCEI and civil society who are monitoring and playing this watchdog role. And really, in a functional democracy, we'd be having honest and realistic debates about these different power systems within the public space. And we'd be having true consultation where people's views are taken on board. And that's why things like the Integrated Energy Plan are so important, because it allows you to look at the development needs of the country, climate change, all those other factors, and make sure that it's part of energy decision making. So yeah, I feel the government has a lot more that it could be doing. We are always happy to join hands and work with others. It's really important that we really help educate the public so they are able to make better informed decisions on their behalf as well.
Most certainly. Francesca de Gasparis, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. That's Francesca, who's the Executive Director of SAFCEI, speaking to us there.